What's up everyone, it's your lawyer, Godot, aka the miracle of your love. If you end up liking this video and this type of content on this channel, make sure to stand rush that like button and also subscribe with notifications on, as a staggering 98% of you have not subscribed to the channel, which is pretty insane. Let's eventually get this channel to 50k subs. Also, since I'm convinced that no one actually fully watches my videos before making a response, near the end of this video I'll verbally present a word for you, the commenter, to say at the beginning of your comment. If you, the viewer, probably soon to be commenter, don't have that word I told you to have at the beginning of your comment, I will ignore you. Now, I know some people comment things like, oh, quote first or something like that before watching. Just make sure to edit your comment once you have the word I chose for y'all to say at the beginning of your comment near the end of this video. In this video, Experience Requiem narrative Fan Misconceptions, I will also briefly be reviewing and responding to Kaleb I.A, Meta's and Xforts' take on King Crimson and Experience Requiem with their most popular videos. I'll also briefly go over Viva Reverie's take on King Crimson. Finally, Hamon and Meti Not the Bad Guy will be referenced throughout this video. All this will be very respectful towards the people I'm reviewing and responding to, as my frustration is with a certain portion of the JoJo community, not them. Now, what is a narrative? A narrative by definition is a spoken or written account of connected events, a story. Essentially, it's just statements from characters within a story and/or a written account of connected events that Araki likes to do sometimes when describing a stand's stats and abilities, or just what's happening in general, in a general situation. With that being said, 95, or at least about 95% of what I'll be going over is going to be statement/narrative heavy. I practically won't be using any sort of feats from the story to justify my thoughts and beliefs, and once again we'll only be using statement/the narrative. We'll only be referring to the manga, aka the original source material for this video, unless a statement or narrative point by Araki directs us over to different material. The reason why I stress going over the original source material and just staying away from guidebooks unless reasonably and absolutely necessary is because in this video I believe that going over the original source material is the best course of action, as ever since JoJo Go and JoJo Reverie came out with King Crimson and GRs, they're just stand pages, right? That external type of information has clearly been more controversial and detrimental than helpful to the entire JoJo community. But if you want to know all about the guides with Experience Requiem and Star Platinum, anyways, just please watch this video on screen right here. And on a separate note, also watch this video by Hamon. It's very informative and will help you understand some of what's I'm about to be talking about in regards to narrative points in this video regarding part 5 in the era. The reason why I'm doing this video in particular is because a lot of people seem to think whenever I talk about Experience Requiem and even King Crimson, let's say Erasing Time, right? Say both of these stands, just in a power scaling, a logical or scientific sense, that I'm completely disregarding the narrative behind both stands and their abilities despite using feats and statements within the source material to come to a conclusion. Even claiming my ideas fall under the quote, the curtains are blue scenario, where an example is what the author meant versus a teacher's interpretation of what they think the author meant symbolically on why the curtains are blue, hence the teacher finding meaning in the curtains because they're blue, while the author only ever says that the curtains are blue, and never gives any symbolic meaning to it with that simple statement. And while I do understand where people are coming from applying this scenario to how I view certain things in JoJo, I honestly don't think I fall under this scenario in my opinion. And I also find the scenario a little silly in practice when it comes to JoJo, a series filled with meaning, and a story where some of those meanings are never explained and left up to the reader's interpretation. For example, in JoJo Part 4, our main character's name is Josuke Higashita, and in the beginning some school thugs learn Josuke's name and make two associations. The first is that the Suke in Josuke's name means help, and finally they just decide to just call him JoJo without a stated reason. Okay, the author is establishing that his name is Josuke Higashita. The Suke in his name means help, and his nickname is JoJo. Now enter Meti Not the Bad Guy's interpretation. He finds meaning in Josuke's name beyond what the author already gave us. Meti tells us that the Suke in Josuke's name also means Joe, and the Higashita means Eastern person. What Meti just did here is a huge no-no by the Curtains Are Blue scenario because he actively found meaning behind Josuke's name beyond what the author clearly meant and described through other characters in text. And there's nothing wrong with what Meti did here because the meaning he found aligns with the story of part 4 via Japanese culture / kanji's meaning outside not only the story but also outside the view of an English JoJo reader like myself, and he even explains why the school thugs just called Josuke JoJo without a stated verbal reason. To put it in short, JoJo is a series that has a ton of meaning. A lot of it the author won't fully explain himself, but is left up to the reader's interpretation to accurately gauge what he meant. This is something many JoJo YouTubers, including myself, regularly do in different ways, so I honestly don't see what exactly is the problem here. I think the bigger issue is people using the Curtains Are Blue scenario to establish that there's no deeper meaning in JoJo than what's already said, when that's just blatantly wrong, and even the author Rocky would disagree with that notion, because our interpretations of what we think he means with anything on a deeper level and in the most accurate way possible comes from how we interpret the original source material by adding Araki's personality, Japanese culture, the theme of the story, etc. to the mix. We're interpreting an original source material where it doesn't always hold the reader's hand on what everything means. I also think Xforts' video on Toru from Part 8 JoJolion is a great example of this. More reasons as to why I'm making this video, as there isn't just like one reason, is because I'm insanely curious on where people get most of their narrative arguments from, like when it comes to just GR and King Crimson, and I would like to see if they're true and I simply missed something like everyone says, or they aren't true and for 8 years most of the community have been living under giant narrative misconceptions when it comes to the meaning and narrative power scaling of GR and King Crimson. Like claiming that narratively GR has no limits because it hasn't demonstrated any, like in its brief appearance, with vague and broad descriptions of the stand and its ability, and because of that like revert to zero, like it could do anything, it could revert to zero anything and everything without any real like prerequisite or rule. It's the #1 stand in JoJo, and that its ability and physical stats will always be transcendent of all like stands throughout the entire series and blah blah blah, right? Then there's people claiming King Crimson's time erase must be literal and cannot have any other potential meaning or interpretation to it, applying the Curtains Are Blue scenario to anyone that has another interpretation when they themselves are unknowingly the teacher here interpreting meaning in what the author stated in his work, which I will get into proving when I go over Xforts' take on Diablo's like time erase in like my quote, Diablo / King Crimson time erase narrative like portion of this video, right? Finally, in my investigative research to find where the core narrative arguments and points like of just where GR and King Crimson come from, I found for GR it comes from Xforts' almost 7-year-old video on just Gold Experience Requiem versus Tussac 4 with 2 million views, where he says from like 303 to 325, I'm going to quote him here. It was also stated by Gold Experience Requiem itself that Journal doesn't even know what the stand is fully capable of, implying how absolute and incomprehensible the capabilities of the stand, abilities are. As for GR's stand stats, they are all none. I think this is because Araki just wanted to show how different Gold Experience Requiem is from every other stand, and how its power is just unmeasurable. And that's all he says narratively, with evidence regarding gauging how powerful GR's ability is, and he only talks about the stand's power as Revert to Zero is the main focus of his video. His video description is literally Zero versus Infinity, like come on. And that stayed true as the main premise of his entire video. As for everything else, he doesn't seem to bring up GR's physical capabilities at all, but that doesn't stop people from coming off that video just running with the idea that GR's physical capabilities are above like the stand measuring rod too, even though that was not said or implied by Xforts in this video. Next 2 videos come from Kaleb I.A and Meadows. First one's like, okay, why Gold Experience Requiem is just broken, and the most terrifying stands, Gold Experience Requiem. One has over 1 million views from 3 years ago, and the other is a little bit more current with close to 1 million views. Hope it breaks 1 million views. Let's go, Meadows, let's go! But anyways, Now, I don't need to really go over these two videos, as their current opinions on the subject matter of GDR as well as King Crimson is something you should give a full listen to in Kaleb's recent video, Gold Experience Requiem Isn't Broken? Because it's expressed that GDR power scaling and narrative scaling is a nuanced topic and not a done topic like most of the community thinks. Everything requires a closer look to see what can't be unseen. For King Crimson, we have a 7-year-old video by Xforts on Dio versus Diablo with 2 million views, where he says from 332 to 413, quoting him right here. Moving on, we have King Crimson. The stand user is Diablo, and his ability is erasing time rather than stopping time. King Crimson's ability is one of the most convoluted, confusing, and unelaborate stand abilities in the whole series. And it doesn't help that Part 5 has very poor translations. King Crimson's abilities have spawned the infamous meme, "It just works," and also people trying to describe it with this sort of imagery. King Crimson's ability is actually relatively simple. It just seems that everyone overcomplicates it with explanations like this. So after doing research and seeing other people's interpretations of King Crimson's ability, I found someone who actually has a great explanation and also does a very good job at defining the ability as well as simplifying it. Now I'll read the explanation he showed. It's actually a relatively simple stand ability that only seems complicated because the fan translator was dumb. Diablo's epitaph lets him see the future. When King Crimson activates, everyone but Diablo blindly acts out whatever actions epitaph predicted, effectively unconscious as they do so, thus sleeping slaves. Diablo isn't forced to follow his own predictions and can move past a bunch of attacks he already saw via epitaph. The whole thing about time being erased is a metaphor for the fact that nobody remembers what happened during King Crimson's effect, turned into nonsense from a translator fixated on the world's power and trying to be clever. Okay, aside from the Kurds for Blue scenario being applied to JoJo getting absolutely fucked on by Xforts in that Reddit comment, as well as interpretation being a huge factor in trying to understand the meaning of King Crimson's time erase beyond what the author already gave us with just the ability's name and the convoluted, confusing, elaborated ability description, and also the visual showcase of time erase in action. The first thing I'm going to point out is that King Crimson's time erase has always been a discussed topic, so I don't know why currently a majority of people act like it's a done topic and claim King Crimson erases literal time off of very general statements that is easily interpreted to potentially mean other things. The second thing here, and this is what pisses me off, is that Xforts in the Reddit comment subscribe to the idea that narratively King Crimson erases perception/memory of time rather than erasing literal time and/or attributing a one-to-one comparison between time stop and time erase. Everyone within time erase will blindly act out their fated actions, tying into the theme of Part 5's Sleeping Slaves to Fate. And that time erase is simply a metaphor, which is an expression or statement that isn't meant to be taken literally. So why the hell do most of the JoJo community take the opposite stance and then claim I'm the one misinterpreting and going against the narrative of time erase when I provide a similar explanation to Xforts in my King Crimson doesn't erase little time, just perception / memory of time video? Are y'all gonna say that Xforts is pushing out misinformation too? Y'all say about me regarding this topic? I don't know. Not even the GOAT Hamon goes along with the notion that Diablo literally erases time over erasing perception / memory of time. Which all leads me to one big damning conclusion. Casual JoJo fans and most JoJo power scalers don't actually understand the narrative of JoJo Part 5, King Crimson, and GER, with most power scalers just, wanking Diablo's time erasure via their grave misunderstanding of the narrative / story they just read, and also wanking the narrative of GER without considering other more likely interpretations. This is a glaring issue, and it's even worse on YouTube Shorts and TikToks. And if I were to be uncharitable, I'd even claim that casual JoJo fans and most just JoJo power scalers don't even know what a narrative is or means, yet will still make narrative arguments as if they do. With all the important preamble out of the way, let's actually begin the video. Diablo/King Crimson Time Erase Narrative. Time erase, or erasing time, is a very general statement that opens the door for a lot of interpretation on what erasing time specifically does, or how it specifically works. Does it erase literal temporal time, or is it just erasing perception/memory of time? As Xforts earlier in this video proves this notion to be just true, everyone, when it comes to the topic of King Crimson erasing literal time, end up making arguments that come back to its beginning without having proven anything, which is bad and dumb because that's circular reasoning. For example, Jobber and GER Fan 69 were told Bill ate an apple. GER Fan 69 claims Bill ate a red apple. Jobber, on the other hand, claims that Bill ate a green apple. Jobber asks GER Fan 69, what's the evidence that Bill ate a red apple? GER Fan 69 would then answer by saying, because Bill ate an apple, duh. This is a pretty good example of circular reasoning, where it goes, Bill ate an apple. Therefore, Bill ate a red apple. Why should we believe that Bill ate a red apple when he could have ate a green one? Because Bill ate an apple. This easily translates over to time erase. Diablo says he erases time. Therefore, Diablo literally erases time. Why should we believe that Diablo literally erases time when he could just be erasing perception/memory of time? Because Diablo says he erases time. Or another circular reasoning example with time erase that people fall into is King Crimson actually does erase time. Therefore, time works differently in JoJo. How does time work differently in JoJo? Because King Crimson actually erases time. Once again, these are arguments that come back to its beginning without having proven anything. Now, our lifeline for this conversation will be an objective fact of what erase means generally, and words similar to it that Diablo uses. Erase means to remove and/or remove all traces of a thought, feeling, or memory. Okay, this is already sounding like erasing perception/memory of time by literal definition. But anyways, the similar words that Diablo uses to replace erase with when it comes to time erase are eradicate or obliterate. Those words are very suspiciously lined up with the second definition of erase that means to, once again, remove all traces of thought, feeling, and memory. But I won't count my chickens before they hatch or get too cocky. Let's get to the proof of all this by going over King Crimson's and Diablo's ability from beginning to end and go over the main theme of part 5. Also, for the people that believe Diablo erases literal time, I'm going over every time erase statement made in the part. So let me know if you see Diablo say erase literal time or something along those lines, because I'm sure it doesn't exist. Anyways, let's get to this, okay? The Mystery of King Crimson Part 2, Volume 10, Chapter 80. Diablo says he eradicated time and forced it to skip. Also, please go watch my King Crimson video regarding what happens in that scene as well, because that scene is pretty interesting to just pick apart by itself, because I don't want to get too confusing here, okay? Now, the Mystery of King Crimson Part 3, Volume 10, Chapter 81. During time erase, King Crimson can automatically forecast trails of an opponent's future actions that they'll move into. King Crimson erases time from the world, and no one can remember the footprints they left during this time. The clouds in the sky do not realize they've been scattered, and extinguished flame is not aware of the moment it is extinguished. The only things that remain after time erase is the result of actions unremembered. Thus, anyone's and anything's actions during time erase are meaningless because they do not know, see, and remember what they're forced to preemptively do. The only exception to that rule is Diablo. From a victim's point of view, it's like King Crimson skips through time, and the victim will never know that King Crimson has dodged their attacks during the duration of erased time. Then after the ability ends, it's like striking thin air because King Crimson is already gone. King Crimson's forecasts are also perfect. During erase time, Bruno hits a pillar and splits it. The result of that action remain after time erase. The Mystery of King Crimson, Part 5, Volume 10, Chapter 83. King Crimson says he erases time. The Mystery of King Crimson, Part 6, Volume 10, Chapter 84. King Crimson, ability description. Simply put, this stand can skip through time. More precisely, it erases a dozen seconds of time. During this period, it also sees the actions of others as a forecast-esque image. When time is erased, no humans or life in this world will experience this period of time. And, of course, they will retain no memories of it either. Birds in flight and the hands of a clock will appear to teleport, and one will not be able to remember how far into a book they have read. King Crimson vs. Metallica Part 5, Volume 13, Chapter 109. Diablo, on some Gojo shit, erased 0.5 seconds of time, then repeats what he's already said before about time erase. But what's important here is why he's intangible when the bullets go through him. Time erase makes Diablo completely disconnected and intangible from what should happen, which is both him and Risotto being shot. Now, instead, it's just Risotto. He erased the entire process from Risotto and Aerosmith's point point of view, resulting in Risotto being shot. Pronto, on the line, Part 1, Volume 13, Chapter 112. It's stated by Polnareff that Diablo races time. His name is Diablo, Part 2, Volume 15, Chapter 131. Polnareff doesn't realize his binoculars fell to the ground, and he should have hurt them, as well as realizing the piece of the binoculars have already rolled behind him. Jonah realizes that time just skipped. Time erase is mentioned again. Diablo can also throw blood into people's eyes during time erase. The Requiem plays quietly, Part 5, Volume 16, Chapter 137. Diablo's ability is once again referred to as time skip. Diablo emerges, Part 2, Volume 16, Chapter 142. Diablo's ability is referred to as time erase again. Diablo emerges, Part 3, Volume 16, Chapter 143. Diablo's ability is referred to, once again, time erase and time skip. King of Kings, Volume 17, Chapter 146. Fate governs this world. Diablo has the ability to erase time in precog. Gold Experience Requiem, Part 1, Volume 17, Chapter 147. Time is erased from everyone but Diablo. Diablo can see, predict, and evade what everyone is fated to do. Diablo even throws blood onto a person's eyes again, and reiterates things he's already said about time erase. Gold Experience Requiem, Part 2, Volume 17, Chapter 148. The future has chosen the actions of Diablo's King Crimson. Diablo refers to his ability as time erase again. GR confirms that Diablo's time erase in Epitaph, aka precog, that he sees the future will 100% happen. It's truth/reality, but Diablo will never reach that truth/reality, even though Diablo's forecasts are guaranteed to occur via fate. Gold Experience Requiem, Part 4, Volume 17, Chapter 150. Fate is a sleeping slave. Sleeping Slaves, Part 3, Volume 17, Chapter 153. In a flashback before Part 5 even begins, there is a stone shaped like Bucciolati's head. Mista asks the stand user why. He explains that Michelangelo said he did not think about the ultimate form of the stone he sculpted. Fate had already embedded it within the stone. He was an artist who could see fate as he sculpted. Then the stand user applies that same message over to his stand, Rolling Stones, by meaning that the form of Bucciolati was not sculpted by him, and it was not sculpted by Mista's bullets either. That's just the stone's fated form. Bucciolati's fated to die in the near future. We are all sleeping slaves to fate. Mista tries killing the stand user, but fails because the stand user isn't fated to die here. Sleeping Slaves, Part 5, Volume 17, Chapter 155. Rolling Stones, ability description. A stone which takes on the form of someone who is fated to die at the time of their death. Then it follows that person in order to euthanize them without any suffering. The irresistible power of fate is this stand's energy, and it moves with no regard to its host Kaleb I.A.'s will. It could be considered an automatic stand. Mista appears to have changed fate for the worst, as even though the broken stone has ceased its pursuit of Bucciolati. Bucciolati isn't the only one fated to die in the future anymore. Now alongside him are Abbacchio and Narancia. Everyone is a sleeping slave to fate, especially on the perilous road Bucciolati and his gang walk. Several of them die, which explains exactly how the stone depicts it. And it all comes full circle by the end of Part 5, with Mista shitting himself seeing something that looks similar to Rolling Stones, and Mista remembering the encounter and connecting the pieces of what this all really means. The full picture, the big picture. With everything I've just said in the past 5 minutes, I'd rather people just keep their opinions to themselves when there's like an overwhelming amount of information that proves them wrong otherwise. If you keep talking and someone keeps telling you you're wrong with facts to bring it up, like, I don't know what to say, but you're making it fool yourself. Like, if I'm a clown, you're the entire circus. Now, the reason why I'm saying like all this is because everything I just went over in narrative not only proves that Diablo doesn't erase literal time, as that's stated by literally no one, like absolutely no one, not even the author, but the way the abilities consistently described and shown narratively tells us the ability only erases people's perception/memory of time, with Diablo and King Crimson being selectively intangible to things during that process because they're unbound by what's fated to happen, and not because time erases literal. And what Diablo and King Crimson are selectively intangible to because of the ability from what we've seen is people, stands, and attacks. Now, time erase is explained as forecasts a trail of an opponent's future actions that they'll move into, and no one can remember the footprints they left during this time. Clouds in the sky do not realize they've been scattered, an extinguished flame is not aware of the moment it's extinguished. And another quote, from a victim's point of view, it's like King Crimson skips through time, and the victim will never know that King Crimson has dodged their attacks during the duration of erased time. Then after the ability ends, it's like striking thin air because King Crimson is already gone. Another quote, during this period, it also sees the actions of others as a forecast-esque image. When time is erased, no humans or life in this world will experience this period of time, and of course they will retain no no memories of it either. Birds in flight in the hands of the couple appear to teleport, and one will not be able to remember how far they into a book they've read. Another quote, Polnareff doesn't realize his binoculars fell to the ground, and he should have hurt them, as well as realizing the pieces of the binoculars have already rolled behind him. Jornar realizes that time just skipped. In the final quote, time is erased from everyone but Diablo. Diablo can see, predict, and evade what everyone's fated to do. Now, all these things we've been shown, and I've already gone over meticulously, it all blatantly points towards the undeniable conclusion that, just narratively, Diablo/King Crimson erased perception/memory of time. And everything I've shown and explained blatantly lines up with the second definition of erase being to, remove all traces of thought, feeling, or memory. The people that believe Diablo erases literal/temporal time over erasing perception/memory of time must have had their entire process of reading JoJo Part 5, or simply just their general reading comprehension erased by King Crimson. This is genuinely insane. Now, the main theme of Part 5 is that everyone is sleeping slaves to fate. Diablo has an ability called Time Erase that makes everyone unconscious without memory, fated to do whatever they were fated to do during the entire duration of Time Erase. Now, which would you associate Time Erase with narratively? Option A, erasing literal/temporal time, or option B, erasing perception/memory of time? To the people that chose B, kudos. You actually understand the narrative and theme of Part 5. To the people that chose A, are you self-aware? Earlier, I just went over the Rolling Stones art and how it connects to Diablo's ability of making everyone literal sleeping slaves to fate, because they do not perceive or remember the fated actions they took during Time Erase. Yeah, fool? The visuals of Time Erase, like the world coming apart and it being like a void, isn't meant to be taken literally either. None of that is actually happening. It's just a visual effect for the viewer/reader. In addition, tangible things blatantly happen in Time Erase that shouldn't be possible, like if the ability is literal. I go more in depth about this in my King Crimson video. I'll keep showing that video out of this video. Listen, go watch it. It's important. Araki visually made Time Erase the way he did in Part 5 to make it look cool, and y'all are taking it way too literally, as it'd be kind of boring and anticlimactic if instead of the visual effects we see with Time Erase, instead it's just this.
It seems they've gone looking for C2.
What?
16, 17, 18.
What's that?
19.
Why are you counting?
Since the moment you appeared, I've been counting the seconds to myself carefully, one by one. But now the count is out of sync. Now why do you think that is? I'll make you my pawn to find Nanali. Rolo, you can't stop time, no one can. You've just altered my sense of time.
Understanding that doesn't help you. You still can't beat me. That's absolute. No one can live in the same time flow with me.
Hey, wait a sec. Counting seconds on the clock for the count to suddenly be out of sync? That's literally what everyone did via the blood drop method to know exactly when Diablo erased time. Now, I can already hear the people saying,
"But Jotter, anything is possible in fiction. So why is the idea of a literal time erase not possible to you?"
Okay, you're right. Anything is possible in fiction, but you got one part of that wrong. I actually do believe that a literal time erase in fiction is possible. It's just that the narrative behind King Crimson's time erase and the theme of JoJo Part 5 do not support that idea at all. As well as if I apply perception/memory of time to time erase with the addition of, selective intangibility, fated actions, and precog, everything sticks perfectly fine. But if I were to apply a literal viewpoint to time erase, the entire ability and its consistency falls apart within its own story, plus cosmology of how time works there. Once again, all explained in my King Crimson video. Now, the question I want to ask you is that if anything is possible in fiction, like you said, how come the idea of a non-literal time erase is not possible to you? Or let alone any fiction having a metaphor in any way? Or at worst, just something straight up just not being true, aka a misnomer. This all just comes down to general statements and context. GR did not react in time erase. GR reacted after time erase was over. Going off of what Revert to Zero does, reverting an attacker's will and actions, GR reverted, just activating Revert to Zero couldn't happen during time erase because Diablo cannot attack anyone during his ability's duration. He can only attack them after time erase ends. This is very consistent, which is why Diablo positions himself into advantageous spots and throws blood into people's eyes. So GR activated Revert to Zero after time erase ended. Even the anime visually supports this as food for thought. Now, Now, someone would say, how could GR react to Diavolo if he was blinded by his blood? The answer here is pretty simple. Regardless of if GR was blinded, what's most likely the case is that GR is so much ridiculously faster than Diablo/King Crimson that it would be able to not only readjust its eyes, but also react to Diablo/King Crimson's attacks, right? Which makes sense as Diablo can't even perceive GR's attacks, even with Epitaph. And when Diablo says nobody can consciously move in Time Erase, that's while it's being reverted to 0. Time Erase has been nullified to 0, making the ability have no effect on GR. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Viva's explanation of King Crimson. I didn't want to include this in the preamble, I mean, because I think it's better to go over it here, like at this point of the video. In my opinion, her explanation is okay, but definitely not better than Hamon Beats. In my opinion, I feel like most of her explanation is like needlessly complicated with and a bit unorganized for comedic sake, which isn't completely a bad thing. The video is very well made, 100%. Just some of the elements aren't my cup of tea, but if it's yours, all power to you. Once again, all my opinion, okay? But there is part of the video I want to personally nitpick. It's like at 1954 to 2025. It's Rohan/the people. They believe that time like stop and time skip are comparable. It's wrong, saying that King Crimson works as if like no time had passed when Silver Chariot goes to swing, at King Crimson, at least I guess in the anime. And Giorno/Viva's explanations is wrong in saying that Polnareff never made that swipe in the manga. So the rebuttal to both is that we see King Crimson is visibly a distance away from Polnareff. Polnareff makes Silver Chariot lunge to attack King Crimson. We get a mid-motion panel. Then all of a sudden, Silver Chariot's motion is done. We see this with the motionless Silver Chariot rapier, and with King Crimson suddenly behind Polnareff without any prior movement, because King Crimson erased time, and we're seeing this flashback from Polnareff's perspective. There's one more critique I would want to make, but I'll save it for later in this video because I don't think it'll hit as hard if I just go over it now, right? Once again, zero hate to Viva. A very well made video I think is okay. Even though I have personal gripes with it, I highly recommend not only watching Viva's explanation on King Crimson, Hamon Beats as well, and mine too. I think our videos provide a pretty good explanation on King Crimson with different styles that suit different types of audiences. Also, if you want to hear an explanation on Time Erase just in a power scaling, JoJo cosmology, and scientific sense, please go watch my King Crimson video and also read the pinned comment in the video's comment section, as some things I say there are notably a bit different than what I currently believe. Finally, I will say this 3 times to avoid being strawmanned by the JoJo's community, okay? King Crimson erases time. More specifically, he erases perception/memory of time with additional benefits. King Crimson erases time. More specifically, he erases the perception/memory of time with additional benefits. King Crimson erases time. More specifically, he erases the perception/memory of time with additional benefits. Alright, now on to GR. GR/Requiem's power. Pronto. On the Line, Part 1, Volume 13, Chapter 112. There is a hidden knowledge within this arrow. They must acquire a power that surpasses King Crimson. Green Day and Oasis, Part 12, Volume 15, Chapter 126. Only those who know the true power of the arrow can surpass King Crimson in its rule over time. The Requiem plays quietly, Part 3, Volume 16, Chapter 135. Polnareff thought the arrow just made more enemy stand users, and also draws out the stand abilities of those who have talent. However, this arrow did more than just that. If the arrow pierces a stand, it'll grant something beyond stand powers, beyond what already exists. The power to dominate souls of all life. Only those who can control the arrow will be able to see what lies beyond, aka its full power. The Requiem plays quietly, Part 7, Volume 16, Chapter 139. Requiem is an energy that dominates living souls. In this stand's case, it has switched the souls of bodies near each other. The Requiem plays quietly, Part 8 and 9, Volume 16, Chapter 140 to Volume 16, Chapter 141. A fragment power of the arrow causes planetary evolution in just a few hours, affecting both body and soul of living organisms. Gold Experience Requiem, Part 1, Volume 17, Chapter 147. Giorno is chosen by the arrow, and the arrows will belong to him for eternity. Gold Experience Requiem is what lies beyond the arrow. Requiem's full true power. Giorno has complete control of the Requiem. Diavolo couldn't perceive GR's attack in real time, but he was able to perceive it via his precog/forecast before the attack even happened. Because of that, Diavolo can barely dodge GR's straight up attacks. GR got a physical power up. Diavolo acknowledged acknowledges GR as a threat, but Diablo still has the advantage via his precog and time erase. Gold Experience Requiem, Part 2, Volume 17, Chapter 148. Diablo heavily implies GR is moving in some way within his erased time. GR confirms what Diablo said to be true, and just like Giorno, knows what Diablo's abilities are, while also claiming that what is currently happening is the result of Requiem. GR then says that Diablo will never reach the result of time erase, or the reality after time erase that he foresaw. None who stand before GR shall ever do so, no matter what abilities they may wield. That's Gold Experience Requiem. Even Giorno doesn't know that. Diablo is reverted back to before he even moved, as well as his forecasts are now useless as he begins to panic in horror and confusion. Gold Experience Requiem, Part 3, Volume 17, Chapter 149. Diablo talks about how his precognition / forecast guaranteed his victory, but what Requiem did with Revert to Zero defying that fated future still eludes him. GR says Diablo will never go anywhere, especially not reality, ever. Diablo will never even arrive at the reality of death infinitely, the ending of something which has no ending. That is Gold Experience Requiem. Gold Experience Requiem, Part 4, Volume 17, Chapter 150. Ability. Requiem is a stand ability that is manifested when the stand was pierced by the arrow. When attacked by an enemy, Golden Wind Requiem, or Gold Experience Requiem, zeroes out their actions and their strength of will. Anyone struck by this power will have even their own death returned to 0, and they will die over and over again without end. And all of its stats are NA or none, or not applicable or none. But you get what I mean. Also, quick note, I'm using the Viz translation as Rise. My translator, who's fluent in Japanese, compared the Raws to their translation and said Viz's translation is good. Okay? Make that clear. Alright, with all this laid out, what's my interpretation of all this combined? Well, first, the narrative heavily favors that the ability or power that lies beyond the arrow is the main focus rather than also granting the stand physical capabilities beyond any stand that exists. Diablo even calls GR's physical capabilities a simple power-up that can be precogged and barely evaded. So it's clear that physical capabilities of what lies beyond the arrow isn't even a narrative point in the story supported by anything. The ability of what lies beyond, the arrow is the main focus. Please refer to these sections of the video. Second, the arrow grants an ability beyond stand powers, beyond what already exists. What exactly does that mean? There's an interpretation that it's, simply just transcends all stands, as it's above stand powers. Duh. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, let's look again at just the statements, right? It's very extrapolatory to use the statements beyond stand powers means beyond any and all throughout all of JoJo, as it's just such a general statement that could be interpreted in many different ways. Like, does the beyond stand power statement mean beyond stand powers only shown in Part 5? Does it mean like it's above all current stand powers that exist right now, which is basically like just saying Part 5 and below? Does it mean beyond all stand powers, even future ones, like only in the Parts 1 to 6 universe? Do it jiggle? Do it clap? Does GR beat sheer heart attack? These are important questions, and luckily the narrative provides us with a more specific answer right after. Further clarification is brought to light, just saying in continuation to beyond stand powers, beyond what already exists. If the arrow's power was beyond all stands in the entirety of JoJo, there wouldn't have needed to just be that type of past and present clarification. Why not use all-encompassing words like forever or ever or continually, eternally, perpetually, etc. A good example to reword the statement to fit the quota of the ability of Requiem going beyond all stands in JoJo is, here's a quote I just made up: beyond stand powers, eternally beyond all that did, do, and will soon exist. Now, being conservative, this could be interpreted as a statement only applying to the Parts 1 to 6 universe. And being very extrapolatory, this could be interpreted as a statement that would apply to all of JoJo forever. The narrative seems to clarify that GR's ability, Requiem, is the benchmark of the series within Part 5 and below. It's the pinnacle of power we've seen so far narratively, and GR would have had the strongest stand ability had Araki stopped writing JoJo after Part 5. Please refer to this section of the video. Revert to Zero's stats are none or NA, so that must mean something for the ability of the arrow, right? Well, it's only stated that Requiem goes beyond stand powers that already exist, not beyond the stand measuring rod itself. So clearly there has to be a different answer for what's going on here, as stand stats are meant to measure the physical capabilities of a stand, or its ability. Revert to Zero having none or NA stats doesn't make it particularly special compared to other stands that have just similar or the same exact like stats, right? Using those other stands as a reference, the only logical answer we can come to is that the reason why Revert to Zero has none or NA in all of its stats is because there's nothing physically tangible about Revert to Zero, nor does it physically harm any like one or thing, which is why its destructive capability, precision, speed, range, permanence, and growth are none or NA, as it's just an invisible force messing with time, reverting will and actions of an attacker. Manipulating causality isn't a physically measurable idea at all, making the physical measurement of Revert to Zero a textbook category error, aka an error in which things belonging to a particular category are presented as if they belong to a different category, or alternatively, a property is ascribed to a thing that could not possibly have that property, right? And when GR says that Diablo will never reach the result of time erase or the reality after time erase that he foresaw, none who stand before GR shall ever do so, no matter what abilities they may wield. All this once again aligns with what the narrative has been saying about what lies beyond stand powers, beyond what already exists, and that GR's ability, Requiem, is the benchmark of the series within part 5 and below. It's the pinnacle of power we've seen so far narratively, and GR would have had the strongest stand ability had Araki stopped writing JoJo after part 5. GR isn't above fate, it's the ability of Requiem that's above fate. We're provably told this by Diablo and GR. Diablo says he's able to successfully precog GR's fated actions, as well as see GR's fated actions in time erase. Only when time erase is over is when GR is able to activate the ability of Requiem, Revert to Zero, to change its own in Giorno's fated future that ends in death. GR makes it very clear that this is the work of the ability that is Requiem, aka Revert to Zero. And even Diablo, while clinging to life, only thinks about what the ability of Requiem did, not what GR did. I'll repeat this in a clearer way. GR isn't immune to fate, and Revert to Zero is the ability that can change fate. But even then, Revert to Zero changing fate isn't that special in part 5 because Revert to Zero changing fate was already predestined from the context we get with Rolling Stones, and in the grand scheme of all of JoJo supports that people reshaping their destinies already predestined. Now, prerequisite. The definition of a prerequisite is something required beforehand or something that must exist or happen before, something else can exist or happen. Now, going over once again, GR's just stand description, quote, when attacked by an enemy, Golden Wind Requiem zeroes out their actions and the strength of will. Another quote, like anyone struck by this power will have even their own death return to zero, and they will die over and over again without end. Okay, clearly a prerequisite is being laid out in order for the ability to work. The first prerequisite is that GR needs to be attacked by an enemy before it can revert their will and actions. And for the second prerequisite, in order for the attacking enemy to get death loop, two things must happen beforehand. First is that the first prerequisite of Revert to Zero has already been met and put into action, and the second thing that must happen beforehand requires an attacker to be either near death or dead. All this for the death loop to activate, because the second prerequisite is just a different and special application of Revert to Zero specifically designed for Diablo's Eternal Hell. Now, some might think GR can revert an attack, like any attacker's will and actions, right? Like if they were to take a step or some stupid shit like that. And that belief is blatantly false, with what's actually provable, as GR is only shown to revert an attacker's direct physical attacks. To assert it can revert anything else beyond what's stated in its first prerequisite requires evidence, just to assert it can revert anything else beyond what's stated in its first prerequisite just requires evidence that's just non-existent and would literally be a no-limit fallacy. And for anyone that thinks GR doesn't have just prerequisites because the word prerequisite isn't in the sentence of GR's stand description, that's the most brain-dead take and thought process. That's like saying gravity isn't a prerequisite for why other characters, or even me, remain on the ground because the word prerequisite isn't used in the same sentence, or it wasn't literally stated to be a prerequisite, meaning that gravity isn't something required beforehand for everyone to remain on the planet, because once again, the word prerequisite was never used. It's so stupid. Oh my god. Finally, I don't feel the need to go over the depth loop at least more in detail, as I just don't think it's relevant or particularly important for this video. I have a video timestamp where I go over it narratively. Please go watch that and don't complain in the comment section that I didn't talk more in depth about the depth loop. Something to note here that a few may have noticed is,
where's the ultimate stand statements for GR?
Okay, the simple answer is that GR has none within the manga. So in this video, we will not consider GR as an ultimate stand, only a Requiem stand. Star Platinum Part 6. Ooh, yeah, we're getting to really spicy stuff here. I'm gonna drop a bomb on y'all. Listen. So, the Visitor Part 5, Volume 2, Chapter 15. Star Platinum can stop time only for a few seconds. The strongest stand ability ever. The Visitor, Part 8, Volume 3, Chapter 18. Stats: Destructive Force A, Speed A, Range C, Permanence A, Precision A, Growth Potential. Complete. Ability: Star Platinum is so fast that it's become able to surpass the speed of light and stop time itself for a maximum of 5 seconds when Jotaro was in his prime, 18 years old. Its power and precision are also superb. It's the most invincible stand ability that has ever existed. For more info, see Part 3, Volumes 8 to 17 in JoJo Go-Go stands. Now, the raw translation of this says, it surpasses the speed of light by sheer fast speeds. At its peak, 18 years old, for 5 seconds it managed to stop time of this world. Additionally, its coordinate of reactions and speed is incredible. It is the ultimate invincible stand ability. Now, we'll move on to looking at Part 3, Volumes 8 to 17 in Star Platinum's JoJo Go-Go stands page, as Araki within the narrative actively directs the reader to that information that's clearly relevant and important to Star Platinum in Part 6, and if it wasn't, Araki wouldn't have written down the more like info section in, Star Platinum's, stand description page. Also, this is where things get a little confusing for me research-wise. In Manga Dex, there's not 17 volumes, as the whole story of Part 3 ends in just ends at volume 16, right? And this, not only does the story just conclude in just 10 volumes, right? But 8 volume, just volume 8 has a completely different starting point compared to Manga Dex's. Manga Dex's volumes 8 to 17 of Part 3 start at High Priestess Part 4, Volume 8, Chapter 69, while Viz's start at Whole Horse and Bunko Part 1, Chapter 104. So by personal preference, I'm gonna go with Manga Dex, and be charitable to the fact that Araki met Volume 16 instead of 17, probably due to memory or something, maybe numerical mistake, I don't know, man. But what I do know is that 17 was not, or Volume 17 was not a mistranslation there, so it's weird, okay? Anyways, High Priestess, Part 4, Volume 8, Chapter 69. Jotaro is being crushed by strong teeth made out of diamonds. Even though the teeth are as hard as diamonds, Jotaro with Star Platinum managed to dig their way out via an ore barrage, as well as destroying the other teeth as well. The Fool, Iggy, and Geb, Endul, Part 4, Volume 8, Chapter 73. Star Platinum is said to be the most powerful stand. Endul will try to defeat Jotaro by using his whole mind and power, right? The Fool, Iggy, and Geb, Endul. Part 5, Volume 8, Chapter 74. Jotaro calls Star Platinum fast. Anubis, Part 4, Volume 9, Chapter 83. Anubis says the rumors about Star Platinum's speed are true. Star Platinum's strength doesn't just come from its speed and power. It comes from Jotaro's ability to make split-second decisions under pressure. Whole Horse and Bunko Part 3, Volume 11, Chapter 106. Whole Horse and his gun is faster than Polnareff and Silver Chariot's sword. This will be important later. Whole Horse and Bunko Part 5, Volume 12, Chapter 108. Jotaro was predicted to be shot in the head, just multiple times, just by multiple bullets, right? And the predictions, has the bullets go through the head of Jotaro via a picture/drawing of him to hit Whole Horse instead. The prediction is correct, and this was Whole Horse's fate. Jotaro is a lucky guy, resulting in Bunko's brother and Whole Horse being struck down by fate instead. Dio is Jotaro's only competition. Darby the Gambler Part 8, Volume 13, Chapter 121. Jotaro has amazingly good precision. Darby brother just now knows why his gambling brother lost and why Dio wants just Jotaro dead on sight. Dio's World, Part 6, Volume 15, Chapter 139. Dio's stand is similar to Jotaro's, but it's beyond formidable. Dio's World, Part 7, Volume 15, Chapter 140. Dio's stand is the ultimate tarot card, the world. It can stop time. Dio's World, Part 10, Volume 15, chapter 143. Dio calls Jotaro and Star Platinum slow. The world is the most powerful stand. The world's speed and power are far superior to Star Platinum's. Regardless of the world being able to stop time, Jotaro says Star Platinum and the world are very similar stands. Dio's World, Part 17, Volume 16, Chapter 150. Jotaro can stop time for 5 seconds, his time overflowing Dio's. Dio's World, Part 18, Volume 16, Chapter 151. Star Platinum annihilates the world and Dio, killing them. Jotaro says the reason why Dio lost is because he made the mistake of pissing him off. A long journey ends. Farewell, my friends. Volume 16, Chapter 152. Speedwagon members say a task is impossible. Jotaro fires back saying, "Impossible? This journey has been full of many impossible things. This is pointless. I'm tired of hearing what's impossible." Then Jotaro offers a solution to the impossible. Okay, side note, Jotaro literally just pulled a Superman, okay? Like, a brief example, right, is that Superman's, like, wife, Lois, is, like, dying of cancer. It's impossible to save her, but Superman would do anything. The monitors in the verse capitalize on that and offer Superman an ultimate solution if he helps them out. The medicine to save Lois is called bleed. The bleed cannot be held or bottled outside of the bleed, dimension or monitor sphere, meaning that it's impossible to deliver this medicine to Lois. 2 impossible situations have been presented, but Superman does the impossible and delivers the medicine to Lois outside of the bleed and monitor sphere, curing her. Anyways, on to Star Platinum's JoJo Go-Go stands page. Unrivaled power and skill are proof of the strongest warrior. Appeared in part 4 with the 29-year-old Jotaro. The strongest stand that combines unmatched/unrivaled speed, power, and precise movement as 3 abilities. Essentially, he excels at attacks that combine that above 3 properties. If he combines speed and precision, he can catch numerous flying knives, one after the other as shown in his battle with Dio. In combination with speed and power, there is a special move called Aureo that has overwhelming destructive power. This ability also applies to each part of his body, and his tremendous suction power that defeated the Fog Stand Justice is a tribute to that power. The eyesight is also precise, having found a fly in the background of Joseph's photograph, finding the whereabouts of Dio. Its range is as short as 2 meters, and it's a close distance power type, with special moves such as Starfinger, Star Platinum the World, and appearance with muscles like heavy armor is proof of the strongest stand. Its body reminiscent of a Greek sculpture with secret power within. It embodies strength of will of, the strength of will of Jotaro Kujo, the main body. Demonstrates first class ability in power, speed, and precision. Furthermore, it has sufficient growth potential, such as acquiring the ability to stop time later. Except for its range, it's truly the strongest stand alongside Dio's The World. Okay, back to part 6 since we have now finished going over for more info, see part 3 volumes 8 to 17 and JoJo Go-Go stands section of, the Star Platinum's part 6, stand stats and description page. Prisoner of Love, Volume 3, Chapter 20. Whitesnake finally got the disc of Star Platinum, aka the ultimate stand, the power to stop time. Foo Fighters, Part 3, Volume 4, Chapter 33. Jolene gets rejected by the Star Platinum disc, noting that it has amazing power. Foo Fighters calls Star Platinum an ultimate stand. Heavy Rainfall Warning activated, Part 1, Volume 6, Chapter 48. Pucci says that Star Platinum surpassed even Dio. Made in Heaven, Part 1, Volume 17, Chapter 149. Stats: Destructive Force, A. Speed, A. Range, C. Permanence, E. Precision, A. Growth Potential, C. Ability: Can move with amazing precision and destroy things with tremendous power. The stand's range is about 2 meters, but it can move at unbelievable speeds. Additionally, it has the ability to stop time. In the previous arc, Jotaro was able to stop time for a maximum of 5 seconds. It seems odd to say that time stops for 5 seconds when time is at a standstill, but it's roughly equivalent to 5 seconds in normal human time. Made in Heaven Part 3, Volume 17, Chapter 151. Despite Made in Heaven Pucci's speed advantage, he's reluctant in having an upfront confrontation with Jotaro because of Star Platinum's ability to stop time. Made in Heaven Part 5, Volume 17, Chapter 153. Time stop is pivotal to beating Made in Heaven Pucci. Alright, with all this laid out, what's my interpretation of all this combined? First, before anyone tries it, Star Platinum never got physically weaker throughout JoJo. That is simply a headcanon notion in the JoJo community. The only thing that happened to Star Platinum over time that's important, even just Jotaro, like in Part 4 highlights, is that time stop's duration went down from Part 3 and slowly went back up to 5 seconds in Part 6. Star Platinum's stand description even highlights that Jotaro, when he was in like Part 3, could stop time for 5 seconds. And this stand description takes place during, like, just at the beginning of Part 6, where Jotaro could, not stop time for 5 seconds. Anyways, I think it's pretty clear narratively that Star Platinum in Part 6 is the strongest and fastest stand throughout Parts 3 to 6 of just JoJo, being stated 9 to 10 times with many narrative implications from other characters and the author's direct statements with, Star Platinum's stand description in Part 6, also Star Platinum's stand description in JoJo Go-Go, like, the stands page, right? With Made in Heaven being the exception in regards to Star Platinum being the fastest, as obviously Made in Heaven didn't exist when those statements for Star Platinum were made, right? Plus, his speeds, stats are literal infinity, not alphabetical, and not a fair comparison here. So, Star Platinum is also, stated narratively twice that Time Stop is the strongest invincible ultimate ability ever. Ever meaning at any time, at all times, always. As well as ultimate in the context of Star Platinum and its ability to stop time, meaning the best or most extreme example of its kind and the best achievable or imaginable of its kind, as Star Platinum is an ultimate stand with an ultimate ability. And this was stated by the author himself when describing Star Platinum in Part 6. There are no other characters, narration or thoughts during this page very clearly. Araki said, Star Platinum can stop time only for a few seconds, the strongest stand ability ever. As well as this one too, is the ultimate invincible stand ability that's ever existed. Anyways, if you don't buy any of the narrative evidence brought up for Part 6, evidence that went up for about 9 minutes, compared to GR's where I went up for about 3 minutes, as well as say I downplayed GR's narrative, did read JoJo, blah 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 blah, you're probably ignorant and biased and don't actually understand what a narrative means, which results in disregarding the whole narrative behind Jotaro and Star Platinum while misinterpreting and wanking the narrative of GER. Okay, so here's what everyone has waited for. Who would win narratively between Star Platinum and GER? Let me explain, narratively how this fight will play out, okay? Giorno and GER would be floating above Jotaro for a bit. GER would suddenly telekinetically fire a pebble at Jotaro. Jotaro just summons Star Platinum and casually deflects the pebble far away, destroying a building. The rubble of the destroyed building turns into a couple of scorpions. One lunges at Jotaro. Jotaro summons Star Platinum once again to casually punch the scorpion, and successfully launches it far away from Jotaro before its stinger could make contact with him. But at that same moment, a wave of reflected damage hit Jotaro. Although he held a stoic and composed face as if nothing happened, Jotaro was internally surprised and made sure to mentally note that ability of GER down. After that, Giorno and GER float down to the ground to approach Jotaro. Jotaro responds by approaching them as well. Once the two are arm's length from each other, Jotaro summons Star Platinum once more. Star Platinum throws a punch towards Giorno's face, only to be stopped by an invisible force, as the background suddenly turns spatially purple. GER says, "This is Requiem," and then explains its ability. Jotaro realizes the gravity of the situation he's in, as he's suddenly back to where he started with Giorno and GR already in front of him. GR in mid-attack motion to barrage Jotaro. Jotaro internally thinks, "Bastard, I underestimated his capabilities. I don't think I can hold back against him." Jotaro, while summoning Star Platinum, yells out, "Star Platinum, the world." Giorno and GR are put at a dead halt, frozen for 5 seconds. Jotaro would then say, "Under regular circumstances, your terrifying ability may seem virtually impossible to overcome, but unfortunately for you, the word impossible has largely lost its meaning to me." Jotaro then points his finger at GER as Star Platinum begins to Aura Barrage GER for 5 seconds. Jotaro calls off Star Platinum and then says time will resume. After time stop ends, a now heavily damaged Giorno and GER are sent flying through a brick wall, barely conscious, but completely defeated. Giorno, while struggling to get up from the rubble looking up at Jotaro, would ask how. Jotaro would then explain that GER's ability is to revert will and actions to 0 before they reach their intended effect. If Jotaro were to stop time, there would be no actions or will to revert if it all happened instantaneously at the same time. The flaw of GER's ability is that it needed will and actions to proceed within time. So if Jotaro were to act within no time, or 0 times, or 0 seconds, via just time stop, he'd get around the ability of Requiem. Jotaro would also admit that if he hadn't stopped holding back, Giorno and GER probably would have gotten him before he could stop time. And then Jotaro would leave, complimenting that Giorno's stand is strong and he should be proud of that. Star Platinum versus Gold Experience Requiem, Fine. Okay, aside from me being the Gege Akatami of the JoJo community, why exactly did things play out the way they did? Narratively, Star Platinum is much stronger and faster than GER. Where GER sits, and this is where I'm going to cheat here in favor of GER, GER feat-wise can, blitz Diablo's perception, who can, react to Silver Chariot, putting GER above Armor on, Super Chariot, and Speed. And just for the sake of Super Chariot ability, I'll also grant that GER is above Super Chariot in Strength, right? Just cause. Now, Star Platinum narratively scales above the world in Strength and Speed, who also scales above Whole Horse in Speed. Whole Horse scales above Armor on, Silver Chariot, and Speed, and the world, also scales above Armor on, Silver Chariot, and Strength and Speed. Meaning that Star Platinum would be 2 layers stronger and 3 layers faster than Gold Experience Requiem. Now, and also 3 layers stronger and 4 layers faster, counting the 9 to 10 times that Star Platinum is stated to be the strongest and fastest stand of the parts 1 to 6 universe. Speed is a vital point here because Revert to 0 works like this in quote. When attacked by an enemy, Gold Experience Requiem or Golden Wind Requiem zeroes out their actions and their strength of will. The Revert to 0 ability isn't passive and is blatantly something GR has to activate with its own reaction time because GR needs to actively zero out an attacker's actions and will. So if GR isn't relative or faster than its opponent, the Revert to 0 ability may very well be useless most of the time due to, GR not getting the chance to use it or the enemy just blitzing GR after the initial Revert to 0 is over. And yes, that is possible as Diablo tries to attack GR again after Revert to 0, but GR is able to strike him first before, he can. Because we already established that GR is way faster than Diablo. Jotaro getting off-guarded by Revert to 0 initially would definitely happen in character because Jotaro frequently holds back against most of his opponents and wouldn't use the full strength of Star Platinum, or speed of it, like Star Platinum as well, at first, which is one of the, the reasons why Jotaro would just simply be able to just tank GR's damage reflection, in addition to being able to survive, attacks stronger than Star Platinum by Dio's, the world, right? But when the situation is dire enough, or if Jotaro is up against the person he wants to kill, he will stop holding back. In addition, Jotaro will know the appropriate actions to take after GR explains its ability to him, and when Revert to 0 ends, because Jotaro's ability to make split-second decisions under pressure, right? That's how he's able to do it, stated by Anubis in Anubis Part 4, Volume 9, Chapter 83. Which is just how he'll escape GR's wrath once Revert to 0 ends. Also, even if Revert to 0 could interact with Time Stop would just overpower Revert to 0, allowing Jotaro to, go first, as even if Revert to 0 has properties of changing fate, it's been stated many times by the author after Part 5 that Time Stop is stronger, superior ability, putting a literal stop to any of Revert to 0's fate shenanigans, or just any of the ability shenanigans, right? How the ability works, just stops it all completely. At worst, Revert to 0's fate manipulation would simply cancel out in the presence of Jotaro Kuzuro, as in Whole Horse and Bunko Part 5, Volume 12, Chapter 108, Jotaro was predicted to be shot in the head by, multiple bullets. The prediction has the bullets go through the head of Jotaro via a picture/drawing of him that hit Horse instead. The prediction is correct, and this was Whole Horse's fate. Jotaro was a lucky guy, resulting in Bunko's brother and Whole Horse being struck down by fate instead. The narrative in the author heavily favors Star Platinum over GER, and would have narratively made Star Platinum the victor. And I'll say it once again that GR would have had the strongest stand ability had Araki stopped writing JoJo after Part 5. But the fact that Araki didn't stop writing JoJo and actively chose to retcon revert to 0 being above Star Platinum's time stop in Part 5 shows that the author clearly changed his mind on the subject at least. And even though Giorno's possibly in Florida during the Maidenhead event, and also is possible, like he possibly has GR as well, right? With the narrative evidence provided for both Star Platinum and GR wouldn't be able to do anything meaningful because he's just so far behind Star Platinum. But what's that I hear? Coming from the depths of misinformation most of the JoJo community will regurgitate thoughtlessly to transform anyone who can't read or do basic amount of research into brainwashed sycophants for the GR solo song, strongest stand, at least top 3 meta, etc. What they say generally goes like along the lines of them saying,
Well, the reason why GR wasn't in Part 6 to stop me in heaven is because Araki knew or thinks GR would win against Maiden Heaven. This was all totally confirmed by an Araki's, like in an author's note or interview by Araki after Part 6's ending.
Okay, what if I told you that these delusional GR glazers don't actually know what they're talking about and completely fabricated an interview into the mental cognition of the JoJo community? Like seriously, nowhere does Araki even state or think that the reason why GR wasn't in Part 5 is because he's solo. Save the day, do your taxes, or whatever. But there is one thing he does say. A secret that the GR fans have tried to keep hidden from the public by creating their own conspiracies on top of it. This is National Treasure 3, Jobber Edition. I'm on the scene. Araki actually did have an interview, or afterward, 6 years later after the end of Stone Ocean's manga run. It's in the Stone Ocean Bunko Volume 1, February 18th, 2009. Araki has this to say about Maiden Heaven, and the entire series he's created up until that point, parts 1 to 6. Here's the quote. In terms of stand abilities, speaking from my own perspective, it felt like at the time I had drawn all that I needed to in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 6 Stone Ocean. I felt a sense of creative satisfaction at that the thought that perhaps I had reached the pinnacle of my ideas. Time itself was getting faster and faster and outpacing human senses, approaching infinity itself, or at least as close to as infinity as possible. I think to myself then that no stand ability could ever surpass it. There was nothing more incredible I could draw. My ideas had indeed reached their pinnacle. Another quote. We'll go back to the root. The Italian Renaissance was inspired by the return to ancient Greek and Roman concepts. The French patriot Gauguin, I hope I pronounced that right, created a new painting by returning to nature and Tahiti. I hope I pronounced that right too. Oh my god. But we'll make the stand ability of the main villain, Father Pucci, even more powerful. That way, time, the protagonist, and the bloodline itself can make a full cycle of the universe and return to their origin. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure will abandon modern civilization and return to nature. Okay. I'm going to repeat something real quick. Maiden Heaven, a stand that makes time itself get faster and faster and outpacing human senses, approaching infinity itself, or at least as close as infinity as possible. Araki thought to himself that no stand ability could ever surpass it. There was nothing more incredible he could draw. His ideas had reached their pinnacle, as that's what he was going for narratively with Maiden and Pucci. And the fact that Araki thinks that no stand ability in the entire series, at that point, could ever surpass Maiden Heaven's time acceleration, including time stop, revert to 0, and that Maiden Heaven's the most incredible thing he could draw, the pinnacle of his ideas, just says a lot, okay? Araki's thoughts, with or without context, verbatim means that Maiden Heaven's time acceleration surpasses all stand abilities up to Part 6. Okay? And if you disagree, you're either a silly Billy or an extremely dishonest individual. Because it would take jumping through some massive logic hoops to try and argue against this. As what Araki says here is identical to the GR, JoJo Go-Go statement people love to just wag in people's faces of Araki saying,
GR's attack power surpasses that of existing stands, or blah 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 blah.
So, in addition, in Part 6, Dio wanted a stand ability that transcends time, transcends time stop. And Made in Heaven is exactly what Dio wanted and saw as a superior ability to time stop. Oh my goodness. But anyways, I know some people are gonna get really mad, like, no, apply context real quick. Okay, listen, I'll apply context too, okay, real quick. But keep in mind, it doesn't change anything. Anyways, let's apply context to like Araki's statement about Made in Heaven, okay? What Araki specifically means for Made in Heaven to surpass all stand abilities, and why we shouldn't take, everything like hyper literally, because it's a narrative tunnel vision that can remove context most of the time, right? As with context, Jotaro's time stop consistently, completely stops Made in Heaven's time acceleration, right? As well as Made in Heaven Pucci losing to, I guess, oxygen poisoning and fate. In that moment, to be fair, he mainly lost to fate. That wouldn't have happened without fate, okay? But what can be inferred is that no stand ability in the series being able to surpass Made in Heaven's time acceleration is because of the ability being able to challenge time stop in sheer power, shortening time stop's duration at first, and Made in Heaven's ability of accelerating the entire universe's time to infinity, as well as being able to speed blitz Jotaro and Star Platinum before they could even use time stop again. And also being able to do multiple things beyond Jotaro and Star Platinum's perceptions before an active time stop. And also the speed blitz factor, it happens many times in that part when it comes to Jotaro and Made in Heaven, right? Also, there's many moments where Jotaro has to stop time to try and figure out where Pucci is and what exactly is going on, as things are moving too fast for him to track. Finally, Made in Heaven Pucci is the only character in the entire series that is capable of literally killing Jotaro with one fully connected attack, be it to the throat or playing division with Jotaro's head. It doesn't matter. Not even Dio, with the world beating down Jotaro, could do this. The narrative establishes that not only is Made in Heaven Pucci far faster than anything Jotaro and Star Platinum can even perceive, with time acceleration, power just rivaling time stops, but Made in Heaven Pucci is far physically stronger than Star Platinum. And before anyone brings up Anasui just capping by saying Pucci has to pick off everyone one by one, it's a slow registerable process, Pucci's speed in regards to killing Anasui by using Jolene's stand and being able to throw knives at her show that he's capable of doing multiple things at the same time. He could have also killed Jolene as well at the same time if he wanted, but instead of just throwing knives, but Pucci went to exercise caution around Jotaro's ability to stop time, and everyone being meat shields for Jotaro, and Anasui calling the stand's attack power above average here is just meaningless because Pucci isn't attacking them with his stand, he's just doing it physically with his own bare hands. But even if what Anasui is saying is true, that the stand has a B in attack potency, or above average, whatever the hell, I don't know, despite it being able to literally one-shot everything there, including Jotaro, all of them having a far above average attack potency durability, especially Jotaro. It just doesn't sit right, logically and consistently, right? Alright, so in the end of the day, the point is that narratively Araki would have made just GR lose to Made in Heaven. It wouldn't be close. Araki thinks this as well with how he structured the story, and that GR's Revert to Zero ability cannot surpass Made in Heaven's time acceleration ability. No stand ability can. Once again, said by Araki himself, Made in Heaven would be able to shorten the duration of Revert to Zero, also being able to speed blitz and one-shot GR, and in addition to being able to do multiple things beyond GR's perceptions before and after Revert to Zero, Giorno and GR just showing up to just die quicker and faster than Jotaro did against Made in Heaven Pucci just wouldn't add anything to the story Araki wanted to complete in Part 6. As Araki, after Part 6, just feels fulfilled about how everything played out, GR would not have saved the day or solved the problem at all, as even if Revert to Zero had the same effectiveness on Made in Heaven as Time Stop did, GR would have met the same fate as Jotaro and Star Platinum, as well as if Araki decided to include GR in the fight, as he once again doesn't think any other stand ability in the series can stand up to Made in Heaven for many reasons. Araki says not even Requiem can surpass the heaven that Dio and Pucci have created. Anyways, Jotaro is so strong narratively that he has to always be looking over his shoulders in case of enemy stand users, right? Whether that be a follower of Dio or something different that tries to kill him. It's so bad that Jotaro he had to distance himself from his wife and daughter, and he's always traveling. And when people do face Jotaro, it's usually with an absurd amount of prep time to put Jotaro into heavily disadvantageous situations to try to negate his strength, speed, and time stop. Finally, I do not think that GR is generally weak. I think the stand has decent stats, and a very strong ability. It's just that there's stronger and better stands out there. Now, before you get mad and start like screaming slander, or you're a GR hater, like a 5-year-old, right? Think about this real quick, okay? Like, let's be real here. If GR were truly above every stand in the entirety of JoJo forever, stats and ability wise, would you even want him? Is it really interesting that GR will, no matter what, revert to 0 anything, and like anything and everything, right? And immediately one-shot its opponent? There would be no room for conversation for any stand, or Rocky statement, etc. to challenge GR because there is no conversation. The stand is just a static constant that wouldn't allow the stand powers and feats in JoJo to grow narratively to new heights, because what's the point if GR from the past will always be stronger? It'd all just be boring and stagnant to just be held back by a past event that happened for like 4 chapters. I know Araki likes power evolution. Statement wise with GR, Star Platinum, Wonder Review, Stop Don't Go Beyond, and feat wise with Main and Pucci, Deep Sea Love Train, Ball Breaker, Just Like 4. So I don't even think Araki himself would subscribe to the idea of making an all-powerful character that can't be overcome in any way possible. Something that is above discussion, as that's just not how he writes JoJo at all. And not how you, the viewer, should consume JoJo at all. Whether it be casually or more in-depth power scaly, as that only leads to closed-mindedness. The simple story structure is that there will always be a villain stronger than the last in a certain way, that the JoJo protagonist will have to overcome, and does. And even when the JoJo protagonist overcomes that seemingly impossible to beat villain, that doesn't make the protagonist immune to being overcome by another antagonist or villain themselves. That JoJo protagonist isn't above discussion either. For example, Jonathan overcomes Dio, Dio overcomes Jonathan. Ultimate Cars overcomes Joseph, Joseph's luck overcomes Cars. Jotaro overcomes Dio, while Dio indirectly overcomes Jotaro near the end of Part 6. Kira briefly overcomes the Moria Warriors, mainly Jotaro and Josuke here, with Killer Queen's Bites to Dust. Then the Moria Warriors overcome Killer Queen's Bites to Dust. Jotaro overcomes Diablo in the self-contained story of Part 5. Pucci overcomes everyone, including Jolene and Jotaro, but is indirectly overcome by Jolene and Weatherport by Jolene giving Emporio Weatherport's Standisk. Johnny overcomes Funny Valentine, and even overcomes alternate universe Diego's Time Stop being the strongest stand ability from the parts 1 to 6 universe. And then in Part 8, Johnny is overcome by the concept of Calamity. Josuke, or Gappy, not only overcomes the concept of Calamity, but the calamity of himself, literally going beyond it. All this narrative talk makes me appreciate Jotaro, Star Platinum, Diablo, King Crimson, Giorno, and GR more as characters that, what they represent, within the story and the themes of JoJo as a whole. As admittedly, while I do use feats and statements together when scaling, maybe I rely too much on feats than the statements, which would lead me to neglect the narrative a bit. Though I will say that reading a manga and comic books narrative only and not looking at any feats or context demonstrated visually is a highly unusual way of going about things, as there has to be a balance between feats and statements / narrative, in my opinion. What's the point of consuming manga or comic book material if you're gonna just read the text? You're only gonna read the text and ignore all of its visual representation of the narrative. That type of approach is just impossible for stories like Diamond Jack, a story that only has visual representation and no spoken or written accounts of connected events. I swear, to the people that do that, the spoken or written account of connected events only crowd, y'all are like mini Hannibal Lecters, because that type of approach to manga and comic books is genuinely insane to me. Just stick to reading books like Percy Jackson or something, and never complain to manga or /or comic enjoyers that they aren't understanding the narrative of what they're reading, okay? Finally, I think now is the perfect time to revisit Viva's King Crimson video and go over the last thing I want to, critique, or maybe just, it's not really critique, just question, is, since we got this far in this video with the things we just went over. At 24:55 to 25:13, here's a quote. What do you think is more important in a story? Following every rule originally stated on page 1 of a long ongoing narrative, or delivering a cool scene where a companion is ripped away from under the protagonist's nose, allowing him to finally understand and confront the villain's motive and motivation towards his true goal. Now, okay, at least in context, Rohan said this, or Viva, whatever, listen, okay? Now, I don't really agree with anything Rohan is saying before this quote, right? But this quote right here that I just laid out is an interesting gray area. Looking at JoJo's from the author's perspective, it makes some sort of sense and isn't completely a thought-ending cliche, like Viva believes, at least, yeah. But, like, because Araki himself, he doesn't follow stand rules all the time. By creating, like, stands that break a lot of those rules, like Notorious B.I.G. and Wonder Review. And sometimes Araki might want to present a scene in the manga in a cool way, rather than something that makes any logical sense in the context of a character's ability, which is why the two Bruno's pillar scene is just fucked up beyond all recognition, no matter which way you look at it, without like making assumptions of what could additionally be happening to make sense of it. Even Viva was struggling with explaining and fully rationalizing that in her video. And sometimes these cool moments in reality would just make the characters look stupid. Like Viva pointed out with Bruno just autopilot staring at a wall while Trish is being taken during time erase, when he should have at least noticed during time erase that, like, if that encounter was fated to happen. Now, I'm not saying Araki never follows the rules he gives to stands with their abilities. He does, and it's mostly consistent about it throughout JoJo, but there are definitely times where he as an author just makes a cool dramatic scene without fully thinking the logic behind it, and that either makes characters look stupid or would make a character have a completely different ability than what they're stated and described to do, but will say it's the ability, and then is completely inconsistent with what the real ability is shown and explained to do, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm yapping. Maybe I'm not. I genuinely think that part is gray area and very subjective, and up to, the interpretation of the narrative author, or like what you value as a reader. Maybe you're like on the other side or the right. Like, I don't know. You got like many opinions on this, right? I think there's like 3 sides. Like either you're on one side, other side, or you're middle. I'm kind of middle. Like I think it's kind of gray. That's my opinion. Okay. All right. Quick bonus. Y'all can take this with a grain of salt if you want. Is JoJo's Eyes of Heaven? Yes, the game is non-canon. That is a fact. But what makes the game a little different, that allows a conversation to be started, is that Araki supervised and directed the game's story mode. His directorial supervision was so prominent that it was one of the main things promoted about the game in its promotional material. So I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that Araki had at least half of his attention on the story mode, making sure it's accurate to his franchise, characters, writing, etc., while also having his attention writing whatever part of JoJo he was writing at the time. I think it was JoJo, like JoJolian or something, like during the Eyes of Heaven's development. Finally, in the end of the day, the game needs it needs his thumbs up and approval in order to be released, because it's his franchise/IP, meaning he has to at least review half of what went on in that story mode and make certain corrections if need be, because he isn't the main writer of it after all. Another thing is that like every JoJo parts and story in Eyes of Heaven plays out the same exact way it does in canon, right? Every character is ripped straight from the end of their part or story, right? I guess excluding party characters, whatever. But they're just thrown into this non-canon story mode, right? Keep in mind, they're all in their canon states at the end of their own stories, and they're thrown into this non-canon video game. And this includes Giorno with GER, meaning everyone is in their canon states in this non-canon work. So, who is narratively superior to the other in this story? Giorno with GER or Jotaro and Star Platinum? Let's find out. Who actually did anything meaningful to Heaven Ascension Dio on the first encounter? Was it GER? Nope, he got negged. It was Jotaro with Star Platinum cracking Dio's skull open and not getting caught by Dio initially like everyone else. Who was looked at as the only hope of defeating Dio after the initial close shave? Was it Giorno and GER? Nope. Giorno explains that Dio put GER's ability in the timeout corner. Giorno is literally useless here. it was Jotaro that was looked at as the only hope of defeating Dio. That's why Valentine wanted to test him. Finally, who defeats Dio? Was it GER? Nope. Jotaro gets nagged by Dio's soul powers somewhere else. It was Jotaro that defeats Dio. Even gets Dio's abilities as well, along with basically becoming godlike with reality override. Oh, and since we're kinda near the end of the video, in the beginning of this video, I said I'll verbally present a word for you, the commenter, to say at the beginning of your comment to prove you actually watched this video. I lied about it being a word. Shocker. Instead, it's going to be a phrase, just for extra precaution. The phrase I want y'all to say / type at the beginning of your comment is, quote, always chase a riddle down to the end. That's one of my rules. And that pretty much wraps it up for Gold Experience Requiem, Narrative Misconceptions. I will now go over a bonus section called GER Fans Forgot. All that will survive is the truth of this world. Righteous actions born from logical, unbiased truth will never be hidden by ignorant fantasies. Now, are your actions born of truth, or are they born of possible fantasy? We're about to find out, GER Fan 69. In the end, will you be able to escape your own dementia? There's a certain group of people propagating that GR flicking a pebble is more impressive than Star Platinum flicking a marble, basically downplaying Star Platinum to bullet level. But let's deconstruct this with logic and math. First is that what GR did wasn't a flick at all. We visually see this as all GR does is levitate a pebble and telekinetically fire it, without actually touching it or moving its hand in, from a pointing position. As well as GR's hand is not an flick gesture to begin with. And comparing Star Platinum's actual flick to GR's supposed quote-unquote flick makes this all the more jarring. And before anyone tries anything stupid, say,
it was a telekinetic flick.
Okay, a flick by definition is, quote, the sudden release of a bent finger or thumb, especially to, propel a small object, and another quote, propel something with a sudden sharp movement, especially with the fingers, right? Clearly a flick is a physical hand motion, making a physical contact with the object is going to propel. Nothing about this, it's just nothing about the definitions, it's just telekinetic, right? And even if the author were to state what GR did, is as a flick in a guy, right? If you say, oh, he flicked it, okay, he's clearly wrong, and that's okay. Authors can be objectively wrong sometimes, okay? Second thing is that this is definitely a casual feat for GR to topple a pillar in one attack. I think this is more of a destructive capability feat rather than attack potency, but let's just say it's both for now. I asked the same person who calced GR blitzing King Crimson in Kosusama's YouTube short how high this gets, and he told me wall level plus, aka 0.005 tons. Star Platinum absolutely dunks on this with consistent feats of Star Platinum's casual AP and destructive capability feats, with one punch, by the way, when he punched Hierophant Green, a huge rock and diamond teeth. These being calced to small building level and from around to 0.032 to 0.0089 tons. GR's casual wall level plus 0.005 tons simply doesn't stack up to Star Platinum's casual small building level 0.032 to 0.0089 tons. Right?
Jotaro and Star Platinum lost to a rat, so they're rat level. GR solos.
Oh, okay. So we're playing the no context game. Bet. Jorno and GR got killed by Diablo. That was the end of part 5, and I will not elaborate.
Wait, what? That's not true. You can't do that.
It's true now. I could just do that as long as you're doing it.
Okay, but you inherently agreed that Jotaro is rat level by even going along with my logic, meaning GR still solos. Suck it.
Nope, I've already established in previous videos that Star Platinum outscales GR power scaling wise, and in this video narrative scaling wise, meaning that if Star Platinum is rat level, GR is below rat level. You know what they say, if a high tide raises all boats, then in this scenario the tide lowers, making all the boats lower as well. Alright, so that was a pretty good example of people taking supposed anti-feats of Jotaro and Star Platinum out of context to make them seem weaker than they actually are. These range from
Star Platinum was totally struggling against the regular non-amp Silver Chariot
to
bro, Jotaro got his standing memory disk taken by Whitesnake, meaning he's Whitesnake level and not the strongest, lol,
etc., right? The people that make these types of arguments are either highly dishonest individuals with some sort of agenda to fulfill, And/or these people clearly do not read or watch JoJo with above room temperature IQ to grasp the simple context of why these events unfolded the way they did. And I'm not gonna waste my time explaining all the context that should be easily understood by the viewer. Just read or watch the full story to find out the entire context of why an event happened the way it did.
It's a simple fucking concept.
But this honestly goes to show that whenever Star Platinum is brought up against King Crimson or GR in a fight, people apply stupid logic to Star Platinum and not apply the same logic to King Crimson or GR, which makes you think, why would these people need to make dumbass arguments against Star Platinum if King Crimson and GR are stronger anyways? That's like someone debating, I don't know, Goku versus Luffy and like just spending the entire time, let's say the Goku person is spending the entire time just downplaying Luffy to subhuman level without ever actually scaling, Goku. Like, viewing this from an outside perspective, if you argue for the character you believe to be so strong or whatever, why put 100% of your time, or attention into just debunking or downplaying any character opposing yours without actually scaling your own character and just assume they win? For me, it just makes your character seem objectively, pretty weak. Because if they're that strong as you claim they are, you shouldn't need to do this at all. Also, I'm not saying Luffy beats Goku. Goku easily wins, and we'll get into that. I was mainly pointing out the absurdities that people do that doesn't just apply to Goku, but pretty much applies to any fictional topic. Like, if I were to debate, I don't know, Gurren Lagann / Simon versus Johnny Joestar, I'm repping Johnny, but I'll never scale him, and I'll choose to downplay Gurren Lagann to unreasonable levels like my life depends on it. We'll never discuss what Johnny is capable of because that's not my goal, and I won't allow that to happen. Which would make people question if Johnny is even that strong in the first place if I had to do this whole song and dance. It just makes him look weak in comparison and just makes me look like an actual clown. Because I shouldn't need to downplay another character and never talk about or scale mine to prove that I won the debate. To prove that my character would win the fight. So, the answer to the question of why, would these people, need to make dumbass arguments against, Star Platinum if King Crimson and GR are stronger anyways, it's because they aren't stronger. Which is why these people make those arguments. These people aren't here for a genuine discussion. They just want King Crimson and GR to win for whatever biased reason and argue anything just to make that happen. Alright. Now, the GR fanbase do not understand the meaning and difference between automatic and passive. I'm tired. I'm so tired of, automatic being used for GR like it's some god tier thing. Okay? GR is, definition 1 of automatic. It's just a separate conscious entity from Giorno. It can do and react to things on its own without any command from Giorno. Whoa! Crazy! Oh my god! Really... that'd be no different if I had just a friend next to me. I guess my friend's automatic, bro. He's gonna react to things separate from me crazy. Whoa. Anyways, revert to 0 predicates on GR actively having to use its ability in reaction to something happening that meets its own criteria / rules, aka when directly attacked. Automatic and passive are two completely different things. Even when comparing the second definition of automatic to the first definition of passive, and even if we went to the second definition of automatic for GR, meaning it does things spontaneously or instantaneously without thought, which is really hard to prove by the way, that would only scale speed-wise to the fastest thing Revert to 0 has worked on, King Crimson, as spontaneous and instantaneously are subjective in a case-by-case, they're just case-by-case basis. I don't think anyone's willing to die on the hill and claim that all automatic stands in JoJo have incomprehensible activation times when their criteria / rules of activation have been met, right? Or that if I touch a hot stove, I unconsciously just fucking spontaneously, instantly just move my hand up, and because it was a spontaneous thing, I'm infinite speed now. Come on, everyone, really? I'm oh my goodness, bro. Anyways, we're gonna go into the other thing: time stop versus time erase. All right, here's how this plays out. Okay. I'm gonna give you the real deal. Here's how this really plays out. No convoluted stuff. Diablo erases time. 5 seconds in, Jotaro follows through with what he was going to do in 5 seconds. Stop time. Jotaro would regain consciousness and feel like time was just skipped and is confused as to why he's already activated stop time. He summons Star Platinum to go hit the motionless Diablo, only to phase through him. Jotaro figures out Diablo's abilities and what is going on, and quickly puts distance between him and Diablo before time stop ends. From Diablo's point of view, in Erase Time, at the 5-second mark, Jotaro will have appeared to have randomly and suddenly teleported, with no projections of future movements during that time, with Jotaro almost as if he had instantaneous movement. Diablo would most likely conclude that Jotaro can stop time, and with 5 seconds left, ceases his pursuit of Jotaro, time race ending. Both Diablo and Jotaro standing far away from and looking at each other, with the new information they both learned in an instant. Jotaro would also mentally conclude that Diablo cannot harm him with his time erase ability activated, meaning if Jotaro is fast enough, he can react to anything Diablo could throw at him, with the added protection of being able to stop time to disrupt this guy's flow. Diablo at this point would he'd just be hard banking on Epitaph, and would most likely put Jotaro in a scenario that even if he stopped time, Diablo will always be right behind him, no matter the distance Jotaro has covered, which Diablo would then become a victim of Star Platinum's overwhelming strength and speed, after time race ends with Diablo attempting to attack but get rocked. Or, after the first time stop in time race clash, Jotaro stands still and challenges Diablo to a quick draw, similar to how the final clash with Endall played out, Jotaro Endall, right? Either Jotaro stops time before Diablo can erase time and then beats Diablo at first, or Diablo erases time, time race ends, while Diablo goes for the killing blow, only for Star Platinum to rock in, obliterate him like how Jotaro did to Yoshikage Kira for the first time. Crazy. All this is going off the parameters that Diablo only erases perception/memory of time, and that he's also intangible during this. If the flow of Diablo's ability stops, put at 0, similar to what Revert to 0 did, then Jotaro should be able to briefly escape the effects of time erase for 5 seconds. And before any Mr. Hyper Literal brings up Polnareff's statement of there being no way to defeat King Crimson other than the arrow, there's context to why Polnareff is even saying that. He's trapped in Rome, he's wheelchair bound, unfit for combat, and all of his communications are cut off from Jotaro. All Polnareff has is an arrow that could grant someone the ability to straight defeat King Crimson. The arrow is literally his only option here. If he had the option to contact Jotaro, he would. Actually, this was the first thing he thought of. Come on. Okay. So, what is this? Someone's talking trash? Oh, what is this? I'm surprised no one put Hamon in this call. He's not a power skiller, nor is he dumb enough to fall for Jobber's play. What play? He would have absolutely cooked Jobber and destroyed his arguments. Call me M. Night Jobberlon, because I'm about to mindfuck the JoJo's community again with another twist. This is probably the biggest, not the W think it is moment, because a while ago, I made an infamous tweet about GR being potential man, and all my beliefs and views on him on full display to the public. This tweet had a very divisive reaction to say the least, but what's important here is Hamabit's reaction. This man will dunk on anyone on Twitter if he believes their JoJo take is wrong or goofy, as well as other miscellaneous stuff. I mean, look at what he did to my boy Metas. Now, after Hamabit saw my tweet, he liked it, and retweeted it, replied laughing along with it, as well as followed me right after. In addition, Hamabit doesn't seem too keen about GR fans and the misinformation they spread. So I think it's safe to say that me and Hamabit view GR and its fans in a similar way, or to put it in a way that GR narrative thought robots will understand, it's because of the implication. Anyways, instead of trying to hide behind and put other JoJo YouTubers that clearly agree with me, at least mostly, and have call with me, how about you hop in call and face me yourself? And I'm sure you'd be able to prove that everything I say is no proof, and that every video I make, including this one, as well as others I collab in, is just a black screen, accompanied by my voice. Good luck. Well, everyone, it's been a wild ride. What's funny is that before I never as a JoJo channel, never made any GR scaling videos for years, which people pointed out and requested, and now here we are, neck deep in the rabbit hole that is GR, and the arguments the fans make for it. This will be my last critique and rebuttal of the arguments people use for GR and King Crimson, as I feel like I've covered literally everything that could reasonably be said, and this will be the last GR related video on my channel for a long while. The only exception to that rule is if Death Battle makes Joker vs. Giorno, down this year. In that case, I'll of course post my reaction to it. Now, with the truth and nothing but the truth about King Crimson and Go Experience Requiem revealed being set in stone, does anyone else wish to register a grievance?